Welcome back to DPReview TV viewers, it is Chris Nichols here, and I have in my hands a pre-production Fujifilm X-H2, not the S. We're missing an S, but we've gained 14 megapixels because yes, this has a up to now unheard of 40 megapixel APS-C sensor. Now, yes, this is pre-production, so no, we can't open the RAWs, we can't really do a lot of testing, but this is what we can do. We will tell you everything that we can tell you about this brand new camera that's coming up. Also, we're gonna show you JPEGs out of it. There will be a sample gallery, and we're even shooting that on the brand new 56mm 1.2, the latest version. So there's some interesting stuff there to talk about and to look at. Also, keep in mind that this new sensor does have a lot of ramifications for what this camera is gonna be able to do, not only photographically, but also when it comes to video. Okay, so here we have an X-H2, here we have an X-H2S, and other than the fact that we're missing the S on the front and back of the badge, you would not be able to tell these cameras apart because they're identical. Same chassis, weight, battery, memory cards, body design, control layouts, all exactly the same. Both have the same excellent 5.76 million dot EVF, same back panel, fully articulating screen. I mean, from that standpoint, if you go back and forth between the two, you're gonna find the experience basically the same. I mean, the real difference, in fact, basically the only difference in these cameras is that now we have a 40 megapixel APS-C X-Trans sensor. Yes, it's an X-Trans. I know we now polarized the entire photographic community. You're taking sides, you're getting pitchforks and farming implements, and it's gonna be a bloodbath. I think it's important to keep in mind that the sensor here on the X-H2 is a backside illuminated sensor, but it is not a stacked sensor. And that's as opposed to the Fujifilm X-H2S's 26 megapixel stacked chip. And whether a sensor is stacked or not has big implications to its electronic shutter performance, how fast it can shoot, how quickly it autofocuses, video capabilities. I mean, there's lots of implications. Now, although both cameras use the exact same autofocusing algorithms, subject detection interface, they are using different sensors to autofocus. And so with the X-H2S, you should get a boost in performance with that stacked chip. Are we going to see a loss of performance with the X-H2? That's something we definitely want to look at and test. You are also going to have implications with electronic shutter. I mean, this is definitely a slower sensor readout speed than you have in the X-H2S. Are we going to see lots of rolling shutter? How is that going to affect our video? Well, we got lots of questions. Let's see what we can actually answer. Okay, so yes, we have come outside because it's right. Oh, I got a raindrop in my eyeball right there. It's not raining too bad, and Jordan really likes this frame. He says it's pretty shooting through the leaves or whatever, but my bum is getting soaking wet from this wet log. Anyways,
not sorry.
Yeah, you're not sorry. Now, one of the main advantages of the Fujifilm X-H2S's stack sensors was the ability to unlock much faster drive speeds when using electronic shutter. 15 frames per second with mechanical shutter, but you could go up to 40 frames per second in electronic shutter, and there's no crop or anything like that. But with the Fujifilm X-H2, it's kind of the opposite. Now, we're still getting that excellent 15 frame per second mechanical burst rate. I mean, make no mistake, that's plenty fast and quick for lots of action situations. I think that's great. But oddly enough, when you go to electronic shutter, you actually lose some of that speed because the sensor is just reading out slower. So the maximum you can do here is 13 frames per second in electronic shutter mode with no cropping or any changes, 40 megapixels. That's still very impressive. And then you can drop down to a lower speed of just under 9 frames per second, odd number, 8.9 FPS, but that's what that is. But you can go higher than that. You can go 10 frame per second or 13 frame per second with a 1.29 times crop factor. I don't know why you would do that unless you specifically wanted to have a smaller file with more of a tighter crop for maybe wildlife shooting or sports, but it's an option. But you can then surpass the mechanical shutter speed rate and go to 20 frames per second at that 1.29 times crop factor in electronic shutter mode. So that gets you basically 24 megapixel file, but again, very quick burst rate. To be honest though, I want to test it more, but I foresee myself using this mostly in mechanical shutter mode. So the obvious strengths of the Fujifilm X-H2 is that high resolution 40 megapixel sensor, which I think will endear this camera to, you know, landscape photographers, studio, portrait, commercial work, anywhere where you need that extra amount of detail. But it doesn't end there because this sensor does now shoot multi-shot mode. Now, there's no motion correction, we know that, so this is going to be locked off shots on a tripod, still life subjects, basically quadruple your megapixel count. And so 160 megapixels, I mean, that's pretty sweet for certain situations where people might want to do very large prints. But enough about photo, let's talk about some of the video capabilities on the Fujifilm X-H2. The X-H2S is a powerful video camera. How is this going to stack up? Let's go to Jordan and find out. You made me sit on a wet log, Jordan, so for your video talk, I want you to sit on this wet manhole.
No! Ew!
Ugh. stand then, you big baby.
All right, it's Jordan to talk about the video capabilities of the X-H2, which is filming me right now in glorious 8K. So we're just doing a 4K video. That means we can reframe all over the place. Reframe and reframe once more. That's so much fun, and that is the headline feature on the X-H2 that is not offered in the X-H2S. But there's a lot of other features that I really thought they would take off of the X-H2 that are still on there. We've got the ability to record ProRes, LT, 422, HQ. This still has a place to mount that optional fan accessory, so if you're worried about overheating, this is really going to control that well. We still get 6.2K recording, and this is a very healthy video suite. What if you really love raw video, if you want to have a little bit more control over white balance or how much noise reduction is applied? Well, this can externally output 8K raw video, and it can do it in 2 flavors. So you can use an Atomos Ninja 5 Plus and get ProRes RAW, or if you're a DaVinci Resolve user, then you can plug this into a Blackmagic Video Assist and you're going to get B-RAW support. So tons of options for you. So you might be thinking, well, the X-H2 is definitely the way to go for video shooters, but the X-H2S does still have some very real advantages. For starters, while both cameras feature the new F-Log2 profile, which is capable of capturing more highlight information, only the X-H2S is capable of reading out in 14-bit mode using this profile, which should give it more usable overall dynamic range. As well, this does have 6.2K recording, but because of the readout speed, it's only available in 16:9, not that open gate 3:2, which is really useful if you need to pull vertical video out of your shots. That again, you got to go over to the X-H2S. One really nice thing with the X-H2 is it is going to record oversampled video if you're doing the 6.2K or the 4K recordings at 30 frames per second or slower. And that's going to give you a very detailed image, very good low light performance. The downside to it is that sensor readout is quite slow on this. We don't have exact measurements. We won't have those until we get a final production copy. But I mean, you can very clearly see there are going to be some rolling shutter issues if you're following fast moving subjects or panning with this camera. When I heard that the X-H2S was the camera with the stacked sensor and the X-H2 was the high resolution camera, I just naturally assumed, well, for hybrid shooters, the X-H2S is going to be the way to go. But unfortunately, it's not actually that simple. If you're really interested in high resolution video, that 8K recording, then the X-H2 might be the better camera for you. But for me personally, I'm going to take a little more dynamic range, less rolling shutter of the X-H2S. That will be more useful for the kind of work that I do. But one thing's for sure, I can't wait to get my hands on a production copy so we can really lab test the hell out of this thing.
So I think it's pretty clear that Fujifilm is aiming the X-H2S at people who want to shoot sports, action, wildlife. You know, they need big buffers, they need fast focusing, they need fast burst rates, and absolutely that camera does that. The X-H2, I think, will find a bigger home with the majority of photographers who maybe don't need to shoot quick action in sports as much as they need detail, the ability to crop, and also the fact that we got a lower price point here makes this very appealing. Now, the X-H2S has also proven itself to be an excellent photo and video hybrid-based camera, and I think actually there's a lot of potential here for this camera to also do that. I don't think we should write this off as just a photographer's camera, because the video capabilities here still have a lot of potential for people who want more detail over maybe dynamic range. As for how this camera is going to handle a lot of photographic situations, that's what I really want to test out. What's the dynamic range and low light performance going to be like on this new sensor? What is the autofocusing capability going to be on this non-stacked chip compared to the Fujifilm X-H2S? How long is the buffer going to last with those larger files? So that's definitely what we're going to answer when we get a full production copy, but I do think there's a lot of interesting potential here, and I hope you guys do too. So definitely subscribe to the channel and click that notification bell so when our full review comes out, you don't miss that. Leave comments below. Let us know if there's anything you want us to test on this camera going forward when we do get a production copy. Otherwise, as always, we appreciate you being here. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you soon for another episode of DPReview TV.